we move on to talk about the men's Olympic bronze medal game. Um, these are the two teams that lost the semifinal, and and usually with these sort of third place sort of matches, they tend to not have huge significance. I'm talking specifically, the European Championship. They don't have one. Copa America, they don't have one. They don't have third place game. But I'm talking about the World Cup third place games. They don't typically happen to have the most, in terms of most interest amongst fans, and they're kind of just played for just to be played. But it's a little bit different with the Olympic Games in terms of men's soccer, or even women's soccer with the bronze medal game, because the bronze medal is a big thing. Everyone, it's an Olympic event. Winning the bronze medal, it's a huge significance in terms of Olympians. It goes into the medal count in terms of the nation, and bronze medal, it means something. It signifies something. You get on the podium, you get to hear your national anthem being played amongst the top three teams. It means something to win a bronze medal. You go home with the medal. You go home with the Olympic medal. You're an Olympic medalist, a bronze medalist. So there's significance there. And then there's also significance with Morocco and Egypt. Number one, these are two teams that are both vying for their first medal at the Olympic men's soccer Olympic Games. These are two teams that have never medaled at the Olympic Games. In fact, these are both of them. They're gonna be their top finishes no matter what, no matter who wins this game. This will be their top finish ever at a men's soccer Olympic Games. So there's that in that fact that they want to be the first. They want to earn their first medal for their country, and it'll be huge for the development in terms of what Morocco has been able to develop into a football nation over the past few years, or Egypt on the other hand, that are trying to start something special as well, that see what Morocco has been able to do and want to replicate that sort of success on their own. That's going to be a big factor too, winning this bronze medal game. Another thing is huge rivalry amongst these two teams in terms of these North African nations. Huge rivalry there, huge spirit there, sort of a derby, sort of an international derby. One of the best African derbies. It's not quite like Egypt, Algeria, which could get really rough. It is a really amazing derby, but but there's still a rivalry between these two African African teams, between Morocco and Egypt. There's still a rivalry amongst these sort of teams, so it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how this game played out. There's a lot of youth ability between the two teams, with the best U23 sides, mostly the best. And then you also have the experience of players like Akraf Hakimi and Mohamed El Nene, which makes it even more, which will make the game just that a little bit more interesting, So, and it's really great to have two African nations fighting in the third place game. It really shows the rise of African football, the ability of African football. You're seeing these sort of, you're seeing African teams in the past, they've kind of focused all their attention on the first team and really neglect the development aspect, because that's how you make the best national team and develop the best players from your country, is when you focus on the youth, you implement the tactical understanding and good ability in terms of being able to play tight spaces and all that. You implement that in the youth sort of players, and they gradually come up to be those sort of world-class players that Morocco has started to emphasize, that Egypt, as we see, are trying to start emphasizing. And when you do that, you tend to value these sort of Olympic Games, because these Olympic Games are good experience for those sort of youth players to take that next level, and it has a chance to be the sort of platform for Morocco, for Egyptian youth players to make that move to Europe. We've seen I believe it was Adli from Egypt. He's had a very good tournament. He could put on he's put on a good showing for himself, for his resume. So it's great. The two wingers from Morocco, I don't know exactly their name, but they've been brilliant in this tournament. They've put this on their resume. And yeah, and despite both these teams seeing their gold medal hopes uh, uh, um, taken away from them in devastating sort of situations, they'll still be looking to really make this a hugely successful tournament and being able to medal for the Olympic Games to get on the podium. Egypt, Egypt and Morocco have had similar journeys. They both progressed as group winners. They both had disappointing games. Egypt did in their opening game against Dominican Republic. Morocco did in their second game against Ukraine, despite dominating, losing that game. But in general, they've been really successful in this tournament. Egypt, they were able to go on after this disappointing opening game, and they were able to get some great wins against Spain. No, they played Spain in their final game. I believe that they played. Who did they play in their second game? They played Uzbekistan, and then they played Uzbekistan. Yeah, they played Uzbekistan. Then they played Spain, and were able to win the group after beating Spain. Morocco, on the other hand, they started off their opening of the tournament by beating Argentina, one of the teams that were seen as heavy favorites in this in terms of the players that they brought. They brought in players like Julian Alvarez, Nicolas Otamendi, Thiago Almada. But they lost to Morocco in that opening game in a very, very crazy game. They equalized at the end. There was firecrackers and stuff thrown on the field, forced everyone to evacuate. The players were sent into the locker room. We thought it was because the full-time whistle was blown. No, it was not. Once the players got in, they were saying the game is not over. They still need to do a review. The players come on an hour, 40 minutes later, 2 hours later. They do the VAR review. It's deemed that it wasn't a goal, and then they play on the rest of the game, in which Morocco ended up being the winners. And at the end, it was fair because it was offsides, but it was a crazy game. But they won that opening game. They lost to Ukraine. In that second game, in which they really dominated, it was really horrible loss. But they capped off their campaign by destroying Iraq, which actually helped them a lot entering the knockout stages, because that destroying that they did of Iraq in that final game, put them above Argentina in terms of goal differential, which allowed them to take on the U.S. instead of France in that quarterfinals, which is two completely different opposition. And when they took on U.S. and they completely melted them, destroyed them in every which way. Waxed them and then waxed them again, 4-0. They moved on to the semifinal, and then both of these teams had very, very heartbreaking losses in the semifinals. They both were able to get the lead, they were both able to take the lead in the match. Morocco did it earlier in the first half. Egypt did it a little bit later in the second half, around the 60th minute. And then, in terms of Morocco, they conceded 2 second-half goals. Fermin Lopez was able to get the initial breakthrough, and they just couldn't get that equalizer at the end. They lost to Spain. And then in terms of Egypt, they were holding on. They were playing a little bit more defensive, and they just conceded that goal. Jean-Philippe Mateta, a lot of space between the two center backs, and then they Jean-Philippe Mateta, they got a red card, which in that extra time. And then Jean-Philippe Mateta was able to get on the end of a cross, of a nick on a cross, and yeah, the rest is history there. Both very, very disappointing semifinals, and the key is the motivation is going to be there. Both teams want a medal, but how do these teams mentally respond to very disappointing semifinals is hard to get straight back up for a bronze medal game. But I think that's not going to be an issue in the fact that both of these teams still want to make their nation proud. They still want to earn the first ever medal for the country. So I don't think motivation will definitely not be a problem. Maybe with if this was one of the bigger teams that have already won a medal, yes, you could say that, but not with these two teams. Number one, these are two teams. They're going to have a bunch of U23 players because of the Olympic Games. These are sort of players that have never really been at this sort of level yet. They've never played this sort of high level of football in terms of the Olympic Games, in terms of people watching. It'll be a packed stadium, be packed with Moroccans. The atmosphere is going to be great. So I think you cannot underestimate this bronze medal game. I think it's going to be very, very fascinating. I would really love to see. I think it will get chippy at times. I think it'll be aggressive. I think the rivalry is going to show. But overall, I do think when you base this purely on quality, I do think Morocco has the edge. I think Morocco has better ability. Morocco has better quality front to bottom. And I think Morocco's going to be able to control possession of the ball, create more clear goal-scoring opportunities. I think in terms of midfield, they'll be able to retain the ball more. I think the wingers will give Egyptian fullbacks problems. I think the center backs will struggle to contain Sofiane Rahimi. So I will give Morocco the edge here, and I think Morocco will get it done and will earn the bronze medal for their country. And it's really deserving in terms of the support that they've had at the Olympic Games. Those fans deserve something. So yeah,